help with tax, don't know what to do. The Brysons are here for you. We know every tip and trick. It's serious tax talk with a Louisiana twist.
Hello, and welcome to another installment of Talkin Tax. I'm your host, Ryan Ruff, and it's great to have you with us. Great to have you aboard here of the show. We've got Cary and Angie Bryson standing by. They'll be joining me momentarily. But look, first and foremost, we want to welcome you and thank you, of course, for finding your way back here to the show. Whether that be checking us out on a podcasting platform after the fact, or hey, if you are joining us live here on the Facebook live stream, we, of course, love to have you with us. And feel free to leave a comment or a question below as we dive into today's topic. Topic of the day, we're really going to be discussing the fact that September being National Preparedness Month, we're going to dive into some preparation strategies that can be taken on the tax side of things when you know certain things are coming your way, like a natural disaster. And given that same conversation, from that same vein, we're going to talk to the Brysons about just how Hurricane Ida has not only impacted the tax world as a whole throughout the state of Louisiana, I should say tax world, rather tax state of Louisiana, but also, just how it's really impacted the greater Louisiana community as a whole. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring the Brysons on to get today's conversation started. Cary, Angie, great to see you. How you doing?
Great, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning. Doing well.
So, guys, obviously Hurricane Ida rolled through recently, devastating, we were just talking before the show here and it devastated kind of the area a little east of you guys where you're currently located. But would you kind of just give me a high level overview on just what you've seen personally, also professionally, even of just the fallout really of Hurricane Ida as a whole recently?
Well, I mean, we were very blessed. We dodged a bullet, and unfortunately for a lot of people in the state, they haven't, and there are still places that we know of personally that don't have power, and the people are not able to get really back to work or back in their homes. Actually, Cary's roommate from law school he is still displaced, and his office was basically destroyed. So, we had several employees who live in Baton Rouge and the New Orleans area who were affected directly. Roof leaks, no internet still, and just they had to evacuate and spend a lot of time away from their homes. But I will say I have to give them kudos because they worked through it all, and they've been serving our clients well, in spite of some obstacles. So I do have to give them a big applaud and some cheers.
Well, yeah, I mean, Louisiana, so, I think our people are very resilient in that nature. We've been through hurricanes before, and we unfortunately, seem to know how to get through this in a timely fashion. The issue, I think, is power. Once the power gets back on, I think people come back to life, air conditioners start running again, and and people could get back to work. And that's what everybody wants. They just want to get back to work, get back to their life.
Sure.
So we clean it up and move on. Unfortunately, I was speaking to some insurance adjuster the other day, and he said he thinks, from what he's seeing and hearing, that this loss will be of the Hurricane Sandy type loss. It'll be one of the big ones. So it was pretty bad. I mean, we had some, areas of the state are pretty devastated. I'll tell you, just east of us too. It's amazing how it just draws a line. You just go 20, 30 miles and a little bit further south, and it's complete. It looks, it's a complete destruction. So,
wow. Well, I mean, hey, obviously condolences out to everybody in the Louisiana area, and especially those that are joining us here, live on the show today that are hearing this. I mean, yes, Louisiana being a resilient state, this is not the first time by any means, that you've, had to deal with a natural disaster of this caliber. But, guys, as I was kind of preparing for today's show, I was just thinking about just the personal element of this. Obviously, yes, your home could be decimated. Your life is uprooted for a time. And then there's a massive challenge to kind of reconsider and to tackle really in getting your life back in order, whether that be your house, your personal possessions, your job, all the things, right? So the last thing that you are typically thinking about is taxes during this time, right? You're not thinking about the repercussions of a natural disaster when it comes to the IRS. But the reality of the situation is it does exist. This is a factor in this whole messy equation. So that being said, I think a good place for us to maybe start would be, why don't you talk to me a little bit about just some disaster options that might exist with the IRS and why those options even exist in the first place?
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, in every disaster, the IRS will respond once and it's all the timing of it is all with the president declaring the area a natural disaster, and once that happens, that enables the IRS to then follow suit and declare and to enact some tax relief provisions, and they've done so. So if you're listening in Louisiana, you should know that in August, at the end of August 31st, I think it was, the IRS issued finally their declaration that the big one is the extension of all the filing deadlines, because we have a bunch of filing deadlines for businesses coming up in September for of course the individual income tax extension. It was so if you extended your return to the October 15th deadline, you automatically get an extension to January 3rd of 2022. But the trick there is you had to have that extension. If you didn't file the extension and you weren't on properly on an extended time, then that's not going to apply to you. You're not going to be able to go back and grab it now because of the hurricane. But pretty much all the deadlines of things that were coming up will be extended, and usually what happens is the penalties are abated as well for people not making their payments on taxes that were due during this time period. They'll abate the penalties. It's usually done by the computer. It's supposed to be done by the computer automatically, but the computer's not 100% perfect. And it's something that's should be really simple to fix. If you notice that you have a penalty that was assigned to you for that time period, it's I would say a simple phone call. But as we all know, when you call the IRS, you sit on hold for 2 hours, and then it should be a simple phone call to get it abated, because it just means the computer made a little glitch. But Is there anything else I missed? Did I cover everything?
No, I would say, though, if you have not filed an extension and you are affected, and technically this IRS extension would give someone time, until January to file a return. If you did not file an extension, I would still, and you are penalized, I would definitely file by January 3rd. And then I would actually request abatement of any late filing penalty based on your return. I think they're going to give a little leeway based on the disaster declaration for late filing penalties.
Yeah.
So
another little trick I guess I'll mention, and I don't know how much we want to dive into this, but because a lot of people will need money, they'll need cash. At this time to rebuild, to buy clothes that were destroyed,
hotel rooms,
fix the house that was destroyed, replace whatever was destroyed. And a lot of times their insurance companies are just because of the sheer volume of claims, can't move as fast enough. There are provisions set up at the IRS where they will grant immediate refunds for disaster losses coming from these federally declared areas, emergency areas. So if a taxpayer is in a dire strait of cash, one thing they may be able to do is go back, and you actually can carry that back a year. So you would go back, amend your return for last year, claim the loss, which would then generate you a refund, and they would issue that very quickly. So that system is kind of in place. It is somewhat tricky because you got to amend a return and kind of do things like that. Sometimes that's the best thing to do. But if somebody's in dire straits and needs some immediate cash and they just don't have any other sources to go to, there's certainly something to look at. Because the risk of at that point, who cares about the risk of audit if you're going to go back and amend? I mean that all you're worried about is getting your immediate refund. So I'll throw that out there because that's certainly something that's always included in these IRS disaster declarations.
So guys, one of the big things that happens anytime a natural disaster rolls through is we start hearing the word FEMA pop up a lot. FEMA in their work with natural disasters. So walk us through the FEMA disaster grants, as well as the FEMA disaster loans that exist for people that have suffered a type of natural disaster like Hurricane Ida, and walk us through the ins and outs of this.
So the grants are not included in your taxable income, and a grant is exactly what you would think it would be. A grant is FEMA is going to give you money, and you don't have to pay it back. There are some qualifier provisions for those FEMA grants, and so I would certainly apply if you need the money. But know that they're not just, in my experience, they have not been automatically granted to every single person who applies. And, it's a government agency. So you're going to have some red tape to navigate through. And I would not just instantly rely on a FEMA grant. But the upside is if you are granted a grant, it's not taxable income on your return, and you don't have to pay it back typically. So that there's a win there. It is a windfall because it's designed to give people a lift up. So, and then the loans are a different animal. I mean, I'll let Cary tackle the loan part, but there's a lot of misconception with grants versus loans in my prior experience with previous hurricanes and how people handle those.
Yeah, I want to go back because I don't know if I said it. I probably should have before we talk about the loans. The disaster area was the entire state of Louisiana. It was not just the immediate area that was really destroyed. Yeah. It is the entire state of Louisiana. So even the people in North Louisiana who received a lot of rain and flooding, but they are also included. So you don't have to have a loss or have been hit directly by the hurricane. And it's actually includes, I guess it'd be counties outside Louisiana, but it includes counties on the bordering. So you have to really kind of look at it and see. And it applies to everybody who not only lives here, but also if you work here. Also, if you have paper stored here and things like that. So it's not just for the people who live here. These tax relief provisions provided by the IRS are very broad, and frankly, something that we have to be aware of as tax practitioners with people when we're trying to resolve people's tax liabilities, because there's certain provisions that we could use to their advantage, and we do all the time. I mean, we I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but we were in practice during Hurricane Katrina doing this. And, we still have cases where we're using the Hurricane Katrina provisions in certain tax relief mechanisms. So I probably needed to say that. I wanted to make sure that the people of Louisiana knew that it's everyone in Louisiana, not just the people in Terrebonne Parish or Orleans Parish that were more directly hit. It's everyone. And so anyway, the loans, I mean, Angie kind of covered it really with that. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of simple. It is a loan. It's a loan from any federal bureaucratic agency. It's an absolute nightmare to get. But yeah, it is. If you need it, it's there. Those are certainly there. I don't think they've really started handing out the loans yet. The grants kind of go first. But there'll be a process set up for all that. I mean, we're still, like I said, we don't even have power yet in some of these areas. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what good a loan or a grant would even do for somebody without power, other than, because you got to wait for the utility companies to get all the power lines back up before you can do that. It's not like something you can go buy. I guess you can buy a generator, but they wouldn't even be able to install it because you got to have all the other stuff. So,
well, the SBA loans are the ones that people are talking about quite a bit, So, but those are treated like loans. It's not, there's nothing unique about, I mean, it's unique in the sense that it helps you get back on your feet and the interest rate is low and those sorts of things. But from a taxability standpoint, it's treated as a loan. So
got it. And one thing that's worth kind of diving into here on the show is ultimately just like the FAQs, those frequently asked questions that you guys get hit when a natural disaster like Hurricane Ida befalls upon the area. So what have your phone lines been like, guys? What have the regular conversations with clients these last few weeks been, as I guess I should say even prior to Ida, and then throughout the duration of it, and then now the aftermath? What are the kind of questions and conversations that you've been having with clients on a regular basis? What do they look like?
I mean, the typical one is I don't have my records. I can't get to my records, paper. Mm-hmm. They were destroyed. They're damaged. I have partial records. What do I do? And that's not necessarily a question we're getting, I would say, today. We may have had, but what's coming, we anticipate mostly is that circumstance. I can't file my tax return by January 3rd or at all, because even from a business standpoint, payroll tax returns and whatnot, because my records are gone. I mean, there are a lot of people out there, and it's really not a knock on anybody, but who still have strictly paper records. And one of the in the PowerPoint we put together, one of the recommendations is now to, hey, why don't you think about digitizing your records? But in a situation where someone's records have been destroyed, and Katrina taught us a lot of good lessons on how to handle those. There are some strategies we can put in place to assist and to help you, and using that as, I don't want to say an excuse, but a reason not to file will only prolong the pain, honestly, because forensically there are some things we can do, and I'll let Cary talk about those.
Well, I mean, it's as far as getting ready. I don't want to hindsight everybody right now who just went through the storm. It kind of, but yeah, making copies of your financial documents and putting them on a USB. So anyway, it's just basically securing those documents and making sure they're in a safe, waterproof area. And there's all kind of little tricks of taking photos of everything you have. It's kind of just similar you would with an insurance, like your homeowner's insurance. They tell you the same thing: take pictures of everything. It's the same with the IRS. You kind of want to take pictures of your stuff, make sure they're in a different location, and things like. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the forensic things that it will be, if all of your records are destroyed or even part of them, so you got to get a little creative and create you there? We got you back?
Yep, we are back. Sorry about that technical difficulty there to our audience, but we are in fact back. So if anything, this is a little bit of a testament to just the hurricane's impact on the towers and Wi-Fi systems throughout the area. So we're living it now. But continue, please, Angie.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure where it cut me off, but you can recreate your records if you get creative. Essentially, you would go to the bank and get copies of the bank statements. Then you can track your expenses and costs that way. You would get a list of money that you spend if you're a business with your vendors. So if you spend a lot of money, I don't know, at the office supply store, for example, you would ask them, do you have my records? And so basically you would chase down everything you can and put together a tax return based on that information that is in good faith. You'd use the IRS's reporting system to assist, the wage and income reporting system, and then create a return. And we've done that hundreds of times for clients who have lost, in a fire, a hurricane, any disaster you can think of. So don't get paralyzed by the lack of records.
Yeah,
sure. And sorry, go ahead, Cary. I didn't want to cut you off.
I was probably just saying the same thing I was reading, but that's really there are two things about that. Don't get paralyzed. There's so many ways to recreate these documents. You just got to stop and relax and get through it. The unfortunate thing is one of the tax relief provisions the IRS does not give is the burden of proof switching to the IRS to prove anything. So the burden of proof always remains with the taxpayer to prove, even in the case of a federal disaster like this. It's been declared, I lost everything. The IRS still, if something were to come up, would require you to have to prove, whatever it is you need to prove for whatever relief you're trying to get. So, but there are a lot of ways. With that being said, now what Angie said, there's a lot of ways to go back and get your documents because most of your vendors today are going to be electronic, and you can always go back. Your bank statements are electronic now. So a lot of the vendors and people dealing with it's kind of a digital age, I guess, and so there's ways to get to get most of the information necessary to do what you need to do.
Well, it's good to know that there are options available for individuals that might not have been as prepared on the front end of this. And Cary, you made a good point. Hindsight's 2020. Of course, we're having this conversation after the fact. And it leads me into my next topic, really, is the fact that September as a whole is National Preparedness Month, which, go figure, great timing, September. But I do want to get into this idea of being prepared because, like we had said once before, I mean, hurricanes have rolled through the Louisiana area before. The people of the area have really endured that, weathered the storm metaphorically and physically, and then gone through the rebuilding process to get their lives back in order. So it will never hurt to be overly prepared in situations like these because it's bound to happen again at some point. History will repeat itself in some way, shape, or form. So that being said, guys, with it being, National Preparedness Month, what are some strategies that we can, offer for people being prepared, staying ahead of the curve? Should we know, another tragedy is going to befall us like this?
There's so many things that come to mind. I think the biggest recommendation, and Cary already touched on it, would be to create a plan of action now, and don't wait until tomorrow, essentially, to start your plan, like the beginning of the year or whatever. And I would say begin digitizing your records.
Yeah, I would try to be paperless.
I really would.
try to
I
go
mean, I know
paperless.
that's kind of scary to a lot of people, and we went paperless in our lives about, God, almost 20 years ago. And it was really scary for us because we studied in law school with books and paper. There were no computers when we were joking earlier today, like I had to loan Cary a pen. I was like, man, I feel like I'm back in law school again. But I mean, in truth, that would be the most conservative way to run your business and your life.
And it doesn't mean, that you have to be
cloud-based or
or really in the it just means basically taking your documents, putting it and just saving them on a separate USB drive, and now
grab and go.
It's so there's so they hold so much data now. You can put your entire company on probably on one
on
USB
a laptop
drive
for that matter.
Yeah, and put that USB drive in, or two or three in two or three different spots or something like that if you have to. There's ways to go paperless without really, if someone's doesn't want to be in the cloud or doesn't want to do this for whatever reasons that they have, there's ways to go paperless without,
well, that's
getting that.
Right. I mean, the other thing is I would check my insurance. So if you're running a business and you have policies in place, which what everybody's got to have some sort of insurance, right? Do you have business interruption coverage to manage your business? If you do get, in a situation where you can't operate, that might be an investment you want to make. And to visit with someone, it's not really tax related, but in one sense it is, because it gives you an income source to live on and run your business on, your life on, while things get spun up again. So it could affect your cash flow later and all of your tax bills as well. But just in general, having the right insurance in place would be probably a good recommendation.
Gotcha. And I've got a quick question here about, employer fiduciary bonds in our presentation, surrounding September being National Preparedness Month. What is something employers can be doing then if on that end, the business side of things, when preparing for a disaster like this?
Well, I think, like in that case, making sure if you accept credit cards and your payment processor, because let's say the person that's running or that's your third party processor is located in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Right.
Well, if the hurricane comes and like right now in Terrebonne Parish, there was 2 or 3 large hospitals, so to say, and all 3 hospitals were damaged to the point that they're inoperable. So there's no hospitals, and just the largest city in Terrebonne Parish is Houma. Probably has 80, 90,000 people, and the whole parish is probably 150,000 people, and there's no hospital to serve all these people. So they have to, and it would be the same for like a processor. Make sure they have a bond, because if I'm in Lafayette and my business is still operating, but it's a company in New Orleans that gets hit and shuts down, then my stuff is not, so my company's now impacted, and I really wasn't impacted by the storm directly, but indirectly I'm impacted.
Sure.
So there's, that's why you want to make sure some of the people you deal with, that they're in those areas, maybe they have bonds that help you out, because your insurance company may not accept that indirect responsibility. So it's the most important thing is addressing them now, thinking about them, which is hard to do because we all have businesses to run and we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Right.
But if you can stop and think about it now, maybe address some of these questions, so when it does happen, you're prepared. It's kind of really the point. Just kind of think about it now. And that's what the IRS, you alluded to it. This is September in the IRS world is Preparedness Month, and they encourage everybody to get prepared for whatever happens. Of course, they didn't have the foresight to think the Hurricane Ida was going to hit, this
Right
thing,
before.
but it did.
Yeah.
So, there is actually, I will tell you on the IRS.gov, there is an IRS loss workbook.
Yes.
That
Okay.
it's kind of like with your homeowner's insurance. They would ask you, you download the workbook and you kind of complete this workbook before, while you're not under the threat of storms and things like that, but you go and you prepare the workbook, and it helps you prepare your business, personal, and business life in case a natural disaster would hit. But it's very similar to, like I said, the insurance. You take pictures of your valuables, you document everything, you go paperless, you have off-site backups for stuff, on USBs or in the cloud or however you choose to do that.
Or grab your server if you're on site, with an on-site server, just grab it and go, unplug it and roll.
Mhm.
I've had my
we've
server.
done that before.
I've had my server in my vehicle for 3 days before. So yes, it's
Well, guys, I want to get into kind of the losses themselves. Obviously, people have property losses. They go through the damage to their home, personal property, whatever. Could you walk me through the different classifications of these losses? I believe there's 3, but walk me through what they are, how they're classified, and really just how they operate as a whole.
Well, your losses are defined typically, from the way that I kind of look at it is depending on what property the type of property you're looking at. Is it a movable property? Is it your home? Is it your business? Is it and so the way that those get categorized affects how they are claimed on your return. Basically, the formula is not. It's fluid right now. It's always ever changing how to claim a casualty loss, and
we're going to leave that to the CPAs.
There are some things going on in Congress right now that may actually be beneficial to the Ida hurricane.
Sure. Well,
victims.
the individuals they have a federal casualty loss, which goes to the individuals. Okay,
Right.
so it's the individual personal loss that they would get to claim on this year's return.
Right.
Or like I said, they can go back and amend sometimes on some other. Then there's just disaster losses, which go for business or personal, and they can do the thing. And then there's the qualified disaster loss, and that qualified loss requires you, and they all come up. But like I said, I was kind of joking, but I'm really serious. You would certainly want, your qualified tax preparer, CPA, whoever it is that's doing you, to really address that. It's not something that you want to do on your own return. It is extremely complicated. There's a formula there. You got to figure things out. And then
special schedule.
It's not, unfortunately, it can't be as simple as dollar for dollar. I lost, $20,000 in this.
No.
I get it. It's not even close to that. So you'd want some help with that, but everybody does have a loss. And there's a lot of catch-all provisions related to your income, and they phase out and things like that. So if you're, a lot of times you think you have a loss, and we've had cases like that before. People think they have this loss and they claimed it, and the IRS denied it. And then they come to me, and I'm sitting there, and by the time we look it up and research it, I'm like, well, the IRS was right. You really didn't qualify because of this or this and this. And people can't believe it. Well, because a lot of people are under the mistaken belief that it's dollar for dollar. My house was worth $450,000. I get a $450,000 claim. But then insurance paid this, and you got to subtract that, and then this. And so it's really what your loss is to you. If you kind of to look at it 30,000 foot level, it's not a dollar for dollar loss. It's
typically.
Yeah. So it is a little difficult I don't recommend anybody trying to calculate that on their own.
I think that's the biggest takeaway that I would recommend for someone. There's a schedule. Schedule A typically has to be added to your return to claim the losses, and it is a fluid. There's some fluidity to it based on circumstances that you're in, and so I would get some help in claiming those losses, unless you're just ready to take the risk of being
Sure
later.
Yeah, no, that's a tough process to begin and on your own. And we kind of talk about that a lot on this show, guys. It's that idea of just having somebody in your court, somebody who's walked this walk before, just to kind of hold your hand throughout the process and make sure that, you do get the best value on the back end of it. That's really the important thing. So guys, we've covered a lot. We've covered, the preparedness side of things, the various tax relief options that do exist currently for those that have dealt with the fallout of Ida. And then, of course, now, we've talked about just the losses themselves and just other, really just the ins and outs of this process as a whole. To kind of bring our conversation to a head, I'd love it if you guys could just, and I'd love an answer from both of you really, is just to bottom line it for our audience today as to, hey, this is tough. It's a tough time that we're all going through, but there are options available. What is one thing you would leave our audience with today? I guess that's how I should probably frame the question for you.
Give them some hope.
I think Ryan captured, sort of what I would tell people who are struggling right now. Just take a breath, get back on your feet, but don't delay too long in getting things together and assembled, because January will be here quickly. And assuming you can take advantage of that extension, you're going to need it. I would recommend that you try to meet that deadline, because it's just kicking the can down the road if you don't, and it's just going to linger and make you more worried about something that you can check off your list. If your return is not perfect, that's okay. You can always amend it, but at least you've taken that off of your plate and you're on your worry, but in your worry list, you can remove it. And if you can't pay, then that's a different issue. But that's something you can also, there are options for that we've discussed in prior episodes. So,
I mean, I would probably say, first of all, relax.
Yeah. Take a breath.
Take a breath, take care of yourself, of course, first, your family, take care of your property. There's professionals, the CPAs in Louisiana, the tax lawyers like myself. We've all been through this. This is not the first hurricane. It's not the first, federally declared disaster area. We've all been through this. We know the rules. We know the tricks. We just relax, take care of yourself first. All this will be handled in due time. And for people who, the IRS is not going to come, levy somebody that's just went through a hurricane. As bad and as mean as they are, if they do, they would quickly do it. But they're not going to do that. They're human.
Not yet.
Not yet. They're human. It is going to come. And right before the hurricane, they were coming back in full force. And we were seeing it as our practice. We could tell they were getting very aggressive and getting back. And now they've kind of taken, at least the collectors, the tax collectors have kind of taken a break. The computer still seems to be going pretty good.
Right.
But I think it always rolls. I think it's running the whole time. But anyway, I would tell them, there is hope. Louisiana's going to build back. We're going to come back from this. We've done this before. And you know what? We're going to do it again. It's just part of the, it's what we do. We live in a great state. It's a beautiful state. It has a lot to offer, but you're going to get hit by a hurricane when you live in Louisiana. So, you got to take the good with the bad. And so I would tell them, just relax. As far as this tax stuff is worried, I wouldn't worry about that right now. I don't think it's time to worry about your taxes. But certainly if you have questions and, seek a professional. All the CPAs,
they're ready.
They're ready. They've been through this before. They know how to, they know how the returns automatically extended. They know how to claim the casualty losses. They've been through this. We certainly know how to resolve cases when somebody does have a liability there. We know how to use the penalty provisions so all that will be taken care of in due course. It's a little premature right now. I would be more worried about, property, family, live property. I think the live stuff's kind of over now. Although, the poor people in Terrebonne Parish, like I said, they're not even a hospital open yet. Mm-hmm. So, we need to get all that back online. That parish needs to get back up and get running, and the other parishes that were hit. It's more than just Terrebonne. There was a lot of parishes, a lot of people suffered in this storm. So let's take care of that first, and then we'll take care of taxes after all that. And then in due course.
Fair enough. I appreciate you saying that, Cary. And if there was one takeaway from my end of the conversation today, it's sure once the folks in Louisiana are able to put their lives back together in one way or another, then okay, let's talk about preparedness. Let's make sure that next time around that we're not dealing with the relief options that we may not have even had to access if we stayed prepared on the front end. So you've got the preparation side of it, and then you've got the relief options that do exist on the backside should, you go through the worst of it, really. So guys, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate just kind of getting your insight into this, your professional experiences in dealing with this type of thing, and then also just kind of, hey, getting your raw take on it as, Louisiana residents. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate the episode today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Have a great day.
And look, we want to take one final moment to thank you, our audience, for joining us here on the show, whether that be, on a podcasting platform or live with us on Facebook today. Either way, we appreciate you being here for the conversation today. There are tax relief options that exist. And then, of course, there's some great strategies to be taken on the front end whenever this, whole hurricane thing may roll back around in a year or two. So for, Cary and Angie Bryson, I'm Ryan Ruff saying so long. And we thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Talkin Tax.